Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another edition of Lovin Daily. I'm your host, Jonathan Cilia. Today I'm joined by Julian Bonici. Yesterday was another big day from Malta. The island has officially launched its COVID-19 vaccine certificates. And a survey has shown that Malta is actually among the worst places to live for expatriates around the world. The selection process for assistant commissioner was actually a parody. Another insane story, a Maltese boy has been filmed driving a Mercedes-Benz and police have launched an official investigation into it. And finally, the most expensive and cheap rental places around the islands have officially been revealed. Now, definitely stay tuned to the end of today's episode. We've got a very interesting discussion today on some new mobility innovation solutions for Malta's transportation system. And if you have not yet signed up for Lovin Digest, what are you waiting for? It is the quickest and easiest way to get the most important news and analysis right into your inbox. Go on lovinmalta.com, sign up for it, you won't regret it. Julian?
Yeah, on to our first story. Malta has finally launched its COVID-19 vaccine certificate. It's actually a real landmark thing, one of the first countries in Europe and even the world to do so. The COVID vaccine certificate can be downloaded today on certificatvaccin.gov.mt and it comes in a digital copy. So for people like me who lose everything, it's actually really good because you can always have it. Even if you lose it, it's always there on your mobile. Really super easy to get around. The details on the certificate will include stuff like where your vaccine was made, when you had the last dose, and even the manufacturer of that vaccine. Your personal details like ID card number will also be part of the certificate. Now, the big question is, what will the certificate be used for? So the certificate is already part of an EU proposal sort of saying you'd need either a vaccine certificate, a negative PCR test, or have contracted the virus within about 6-7 weeks before traveling to be able to fly across the EU. So it will be used in that regard, but the question really is what it's going to be doing locally. So far, Charmaine Gauci has said it's going to be used to enforce mask wearing rules that will come in place from July once we start lifting them off in public spaces. While yesterday, Prime Minister Robert Abela, in his announcements, it will be used to gain access into elderly care homes and stuff like that, and also partake in high-risk activities. What those high-risk activities are, we don't know yet. They didn't really say. However, it was hinted that it would be linked to things like mass events and sort of the reopening of that sort of thing. When it came to Chris Fearn, Deputy Prime Minister Chris Fearn, he actually had some strong words for people who are refusing to take the vaccine. He sort of said, listen, while you won't be prohibited from a majority of activities, you are going to be kept off some high-risk activities. Once again, referencing mass events. We're going to see what's going to happen with that. Yesterday, Chris Fearn said the government is currently in discussions with all the stakeholders from Korea, so people I'm sure with Project Restart and stuff like that, for a gradual reopening in July and August. Nothing is set in stone over there, and we'll see what's going to happen, and we'll see what the vaccine certificates are going to do about it. Do you agree with it? Let us know in the comments below.
No, it was a major day. Make no mistake about it. This is a day that many people in Malta have been thinking about, have been waiting for. Different sectors, business owners, DJs, musicians, just the general public. I don't know about your social media feed, but mine was full of reactions. Lots of people were excited. You know, we had lots of business owners saying that this was an emotional day for the island. That said, there were lots of people asking, listen, I choose not to get vaccinated. Will I be discriminated against with these certificates out there? So first of all, if you haven't been vaccinated yet, you probably should get vaccinated. But I mean, I guess there is a discussion to be had. The people who have not been vaccinated, what's going to happen to them? Will they not be allowed to travel? Will they not be allowed to enter events when they eventually reopen? So very interesting discussion there. Moving on to the next story now, I think this is another eye-opening story about Malta. So obviously many people live on the island, have moved to the island because it's such a paradise, you know, it's a gem in the middle of the Mediterranean. But a new survey has shown that Malta might not be as hot as we thought it was. So a new survey by Expat Insider, where they spoke to over 12,000 expats who've lived in a bunch of countries around the world, found that Malta is actually in the bottom 10th of countries that were part of the survey. So Malta ranked 50th from the countries surveyed. We were there among Turkey, Cyprus, Egypt, and Italy. And people who spoke about living in Malta, you know, pointed to a number of things that were problematic. They mentioned problems dealing with the cultural life here, problems dealing with the transportation infrastructure, as well as financial issues, as well as work issues. I think this is a bit of a shock to many people because, Malta is seen as a bit of a paradise. So to see that we've ranked 50th when just 5 years ago we were ranked second in the same survey, it's a bit of a heartbreaker, isn't it?
Yeah, quite sad to say. I'm sure a lot of people are pissed off about it and everything, but listen, I'm not really surprised by the result, to be quite honest with you. Listen, we have a really beautiful country. I really love it, but facts are facts. Over the last few years, we've seen cost of living shoot up. To rent here is really expensive, even though, actually tune on to our latest story, but the rent here is really expensive, and to make ends meet is really difficult. Meanwhile, there's construction everywhere. We don't have a really beautiful island anymore. I think it should be a message to the government that progress for the sake of progress isn't the be-all and end-all, and we really should look at preserving what made Malta. Otherwise, I think we're going to lose everything. That made us a bit of a success story. And just one small note: the word expat. Come on, ridiculous. Expat, migrant, foreigner. It's bloody crazy. But we'll talk about that another time. On to our next story. It's all about the selection process for Malta's assistant commissioner within the police force that happened under Lawrence Cutajar. Yesterday, the Ombudsman published a report detailing the entire process as a parody where personal trust was preferred over actual experience. The case itself dates back to 2016 when Superintendent Raymond Danastas applied for the role of Assistant Police Commissioner. Now, Danastas has 40 years experience in the police force and has actually a pretty good track record helping reduce crime in St. Julian's, which we all know was at least an area full of petty crime, happening all the time. Now, basically what happened through the process, 21 people applied and 14 people got selected. Danastas was one of these people who were left out and actually raised concerns, how certain people were granted the promotion despite their shady track record. One of those men was Mario Tonna. Now, for those who don't know out there, Mario Tonna, even before he was appointed to Assistant Commissioner, had actually been found guilty of criminal offences of assault against another police officer, which the Ombudsman himself said should have disqualified him from the process entirely. However, he was still appointed to the role. A few years later, Mario Tonna actually got involved in a domestic violence incident where he headbutted his ex-partner and was booted out of the role altogether. Now, the decision, at least, the decision to appoint him even raises more eyebrows because while Tonna was Assistant Commissioner for the Traffic Department, we all know what started, an overtime racket and an extra duty racket. So really raising questions about how people were appointed. Now, the Ombudsman looked at the process itself, and even the process itself was dodgy, right? They were, for experience and stuff, was really not giving a weighting, but things like character and traits were really given importance, even though the people on the board, people like Lawrence Cutajar and 2 former assistant commissioners, have absolutely zero experience in judging someone's psychological things. So make of that what you will. I don't know, really shocking stuff. What do you think about it, John?
Look, this isn't the first time we've heard about Mario Tonna. Last year, we spoke to a number of traffic officers that were involved in this investigation into money laundering, and they had kind of shared with us the dynamics around Mario Tonna. Now, I think, the current police commissioner, Angela Goffa, really should be taking note of these characters, these incidents, because what happens when they arise and when they're given power? It corrodes morale within the force, within the police officers themselves. It makes them more open to corruption and petty corruption and breaking the rules here and there if they see their peers doing it. And it also erodes public faith in the police force. So, hopefully this is something that is in the past, remains in the past, and we don't really hear more incidences of it. Talking about the police and moving on to the next story, the police have launched an investigation into footage of what seems to show a 12 to 14-year-old Maltese boy driving a Mercedes-Benz along a Maltese road. So in this footage, which has gone viral over the last few days and last week, the youth is driving the Mercedes. There's a song by hip-hop artist Tyga playing in the background. The boy's having a good time. He smiles at the camera here and there. And the best part is this footage was actually uploaded to social media by the boy himself. You can still see it. It's still online. In the comment section, he was telling people to stay out of his business. Now that the police have launched an investigation, I don't think they'll be staying out of his business. A weird side note to this is that this youth actually went viral last week by chance because he was involved in a very weird love triangle involving his sister and another person. So yeah, another sunny day in Malta.
Yeah, really, really weird story. There are comic elements, I'm sure humorous elements to it, but for me, it just reminds me a bit too much of the Debono case, right? You know, a lot of the youth was a bit lost, driving around everywhere, and ended up, you know, now he's facing, you know, criminal charges for attempting, you know, quite a grievous incident on a police officer, Simon Schembri. Now, all I hope really is that sort of incidents like this shed light on the fact that, you know, there are people within the Maltese system that are falling through the cracks. Despite free education, despite all the social benefits that there are in this country, we still have some people who are falling through the cracks. What I really hope to see is that the police, through their investigation, actually help this young guy, you know, a bit to actually, you know, not end up just another man, you know, another statistic, you know, on Malta's criminal justice system. Yeah, so let's hope for the best and let us know what you think about the whole case yourselves. On to our last story, something I guess we've all wanted to know: where in Malta are the most expensive and cheapest places to rent property? As we were talking before, expats are leaving the country because of the rent prices, so hopefully a little survey like this will actually get some benefit for foreigners coming to this country and looking where to live. This was all done through the help of the Housing Authority, who released this document basically to help in their drive to regulate the rental sector in its entirety. So, if you want to know where the most expensive one is, you've got a little bit more cash to spend, not like me, just look at places like Tajbish, Valletta and Kalkara. Those are the most expensive places to rent an average 2-bedroom apartment. That's for about €1,050 per month. Sleman, St. Julian's fall very close behind. They're about €1,000 a month each. So if you want to stay in those areas, you know, a lot of things happening, you know what you're going to have to fork out to live there. When it comes to the cheaper end in Malta, you've actually got places like Rabat for €500, Marsa for €525 per month, and then Bormla following close by, and Birzabuja for €550 a month. Actually, you know, quite a good bargain. I personally like Rabat quite a lot. I know about Lovin Malta. We think Birzabuja is the next Miami. Then, when it comes to Gozo, the most expensive places are Street for €650, so almost half as cheap as Malta, and the cheapest places are Zebuj for €400 and Munshar for €400. You know, I mean, for me, quite a good bargain. I don't know about you. I actually like Gozo. Who knows? I think I'm thinking about moving there.
No. I mean, when you look at the lower end of the list, there's some really interesting things. I mean, I don't know if you've been to Bormla or Cotonera recently. The place is beautiful. You know, it's very green. I went there last time. There were families walking along the front. There was eateries, like, you know, opening up. It looked really, really lovely over there. And Munshar is one of the most beautiful places in Gozo. And talking about Gozo, just today, the fast ferry was launched to Gozo, a whole new transportation method to get you there. You can read all about that on loveandmalta.com. And in fact, that takes us perfectly to the next part of today's episode, where we will be discussing new mobility innovations, new transport systems that we might be seeing in Malta. But before we get to that discussion, we have some very special guests in the house today. We'll be cutting to a video message from Geoffrey Debono from Debono Group, specifically on this topic.
We believe that technology is a way of how to make the world a better place. It can drive change at a faster pace than ever seen before. People can now move from A to B and save time and money. The pandemic has been a great opportunity for us to realize that things can change and they can be made better than they were ever before. We believe that the pandemic has also given us the opportunity to experience less traffic on our roads. And through our service school, we have, since its inception, reduced traffic kilometers by 1.5 million and saved 400,000 kilograms of CO2. We firmly believe that with continuous developments through technology, one can continue to see these changes coming through. And this is just the start.
Daily. Today we'll be talking about a very important discussion, a very important topic right now, transportation as well as new mobility innovations. Now in the house today with us, we've got Azzopardi from Malta Public Transport, the people behind the Tallinja Bike, as well as Suzanna Maas, who's part of EIT Urban Mobility Hub Malta, an organization looking into new innovations. Thank you guys so much for joining us this morning.
Good to be here.
So obviously the first thing I wanted to talk about is, some of the changes we've been seeing in Malta over the last few years. We've seen things like ride pooling, car pooling, bicycle sharing, which is a concept I don't think most people had even ever heard of up until a few years ago. We're seeing electric scooters in vehicles on the island. Why is this change a good thing?
Quite a range, in fact. In fact, when we launched Tallinja Bikes in around 2018, it was just a pilot project practically, so the discussions about intermodality and electromobility was still in its infancy. And we launched it in Valletta as a sightseeing project, so it was bike sharing, but literally just for you to get around the capital city and have a look at the capital. Then with the development, with the awareness and the demand that has been put out there, we started expanding that even further. Why? Because people wanted to use it not just to get around Valletta, but also to start making use of our bikes to commute, for example.
How good.
In fact, what took us along now is that we have bike stations practically laid out all throughout the majority of the main areas. For example, we've got bike stations in Bombay, in Pembroke Park and Ride, in Marsa Park and Ride, and the intention of all this, with all this development and with all this sharing that is going on, is literally for someone to be able to catch, for example, the ferry from Birgu and get all the way to Valletta. There's a bike station at the Baraka lift, take the bike and go to junior college, for example, or go to university, or else catch the bus. Get to Pembroke Park and ride with the bus, and then take one of our bicycles and go to university again. So it's literally putting all the available means of transport together, and especially since obviously we are part of Malta Public Transport, all our stations have been placed strategically in order for them to be communicated with the transportation of the buses, so that you can get along using the bicycles.
It's really exciting time. Suzanne, why is this so important to happen in Malta right now?
Well, I think what you see is that with all these options, it just really increases the opportunities and flexibility for people. So indeed, like Alan was saying, you can combine two different forms of transport to complete your trip rather than having to replace what you would normally do by car completely by bike. It might be too far for you. There might be a really steep hill. So indeed, you take the ferry to cross the harbour, or you take the bus to complete a certain part of your journey, but then the bike for the first or last mile. This is what is often referred to as the solution, especially the smaller shared mobility solutions like the kick scooters and the bikes, to sort of complete that trip, because even in Valletta, if you arrive at the bus station in Valletta, it could be still quite a walk
there you go,
to the very tip of Valletta. So rather than a 15-minute walk, which is obviously still a pleasure to walk through Valletta, but it might be much easier to grab that bike and be there in 2 or 3 minutes instead. So I think it really has opened up the opportunities and given much more flexibility and options.
Now, another aspect that we've been seeing developing in Malta over the last few years is the integration of technology. So you can pay for things online through your mobile now. You can order things, be it a scooter or a cab, or even subscribe to some services. Why is it important to merge these two words? And is it a bit of a challenge, merging transport with technology?
The development in technology has been very, very, very quick. So technology has, from a software point of view, so I'd like to make a distinction, has caught up very, very quickly, and is continuously being developed. As a challenge that we sometimes encounter is then you've got the hardware, which obviously takes a little bit more time to close the gap between hardware and software. Software is being developed all the time, changes are being done, but then you've got hardware. When I say hardware, we've got trackers, onboard trackers on each and every single bicycle, for example. And that takes longer. It's harder, it needs developing, it needs manufacturing. So to close the gap between the hardware and the software is always rushing so much forward, that is a little bit of a challenge that I think everyone, in fact, feels right now on the market, in fact.
So how do you see this development area?
Yeah, I think this is really now the next step, So now we have all these options, but you don't want to plan everything separately, pay for everything separately. And this is what is now put forward around the world as mobility as a service. where instead of buying the product like we see in many other types of services, we're actually starting to pay for the service rather than the product. So like music streaming, like video streaming, you're also paying for mobility as a service. So yeah, I mean, it's important that it's not only the sort of the physical integration at site, which is important, but also the payment integration, but also the planning of your trip.
Yeah.
That you have an app that can show you from A, your home or your place where you're based, to B, where you want to go, exactly how long it might take, what are your options. I mean, this can be in terms of time, it can show the cost, it can even show how much calories you might burn if you walk, because
Really good.
this is, of course, also a very important
Very good.
aspect of mobility, where we've become extremely lazy, unfortunately, and see that also in our lives. Yeah, I think people have started to realize that this is serious, especially since the pandemic as well, the need for more daily activity. So
Very
yeah,
right.
you could also use part of your mobility as a means towards getting your daily exercise in, and yeah.
So we're talking about the tech side, but now I want to talk about the human side. So the Maltese public, have you seen that they're keen? Are they keen in specific areas? Are they looking at carpooling? Are they looking at electric scooters? When it comes to the public, what are you seeing from them in their feedback and their interested areas?
The interest has increased. So obviously, the more awareness you put out there, the more people are interested to try. First of all, there are two factors where, from our side, it's keeping you healthy, because at the end of the day, you are still riding a bicycle. It's an electric bicycle, so it helps you, but you're still riding a bicycle, you're still putting effort. So there's the health promotion from that point of view. And then there's also the green aspect, okay, where we're talking about mostly making use of electric vehicles, electric scooters, electric bicycles. So people are reaching out a little bit more in that aspect. What we find is that the age is more on the younger side. Okay, our youngsters are willing to try a little bit, more and a little bit faster, and then maybe us older generation catch on as we get along. However, yes, it's more of the younger generation who are ready to throw themselves into it and give it a try.
Is that surprising? Is that something we typically see abroad as well?
Yeah, I would definitely say so, because
Yeah.
I actually did research on shared mobility as well in the past few years for my PhD, and this is exactly what you see, that it's like a very specific demographic that's at least the early uptakers, sort of. So let's say under 35s are the most common user groups, so between 18 and 35, let's say. But we do see that is now spreading, and of course you also have to see that there are different demographics interested in different solutions. So whereas the kick scooters, maybe a more even younger demographic also, because unfortunately here you need a driving license for it, but in some other places this is not the case. So it can even be a solution for teenagers. But then you see, for example, ride sharing or car sharing. I mean, that then is a bit more of interest to some older demographics as well.
Now, we touched upon it a bit before, but for viewers who maybe never did anything apart from drive their own car, maybe get a cab or take the bus, what are some of the options that are now available to them, and how can they connect? I know you touched upon it a little bit before, but can we reiterate a little bit for some viewers?
Yes, practically from the Tallinja point of view, once you've got your Tallinja card, you are very, very mobile. Because you can catch the ferry, you can catch the bus, you can take the Gozo fast ferry now, you can take one of the Tallinja bikes. So with one card, everything is integrated, and you're just literally moving from one platform to another. So it's very, very, very integrated, very joint. I mean, imagine you took the ferry, you took the bike, and then suddenly you're taking the bus, and you've chose 3 different means of transport. It's very, very, very easy. I mean, I invite one to literally take the plunge, not to be afraid of technology. It's easy, it's straightforward, and just go for it, and lessen your use in your car or on your bike,
It's really, really a great option to have in Malta right now. So moving forward, what are some of the next steps we may be seeing when it comes to innovation in Malta? Is there something that's, in your head that you're dreaming up right now, or you're seeing abroad that might be practical in Malta's context?
What probably will happen is wider spread, because at the moment you probably realize that the services are being offered mostly, I wouldn't say always, but mostly in concentrated parts of the country, because that is where the increased use is. But one is definitely would be looking at more widespread and a little bit more freedom with where you can use your vehicle, with where you can leave your vehicle, how long you can keep your vehicle. So the more it grows and the more the demand grows, so it will become more and more flexible. The more users use it, the better it is. You know, technology will keep advancing. You know, we can put more vehicles on the road. So that's what we're seeing long term.
Suzanne?
Well, I would say one, what I said before about the integration in terms of payment, in terms of information. But second, and I'm not sure it will be qualified as an innovation, but apart from all these new options, opportunities that we now have, the incentives that there are, which they call the carrots, you know, the nice things, we actually, to promote that shift towards cleaner transport, towards more active transport, you also need some measures that might hurt a little bit more. So for example, paid parking or low emission zones where certain cars are not allowed, because we see from abroad, I mean from studies as well, that the only real way to change how people move is to make what you want more attractive, more fun, cheaper, more easy, but also to make what we don't want anymore, to make that a little bit more difficult. Of course, providing other options. But yes, I think we are now ready, now that we have all these opportunities, to move in that direction, because first of all, we know we need to reduce our emissions. We know how important air quality is, how important more public spaces and better public spaces are. So I really hope we are now at the start of that shift as well.
And I think it's a very, very exciting time for Malta, especially seeing the quick developments we're seeing in so many sectors. Guys, if you have not yet got a Tallinja card, I do suggest you grab one, even for a day or two. Try it out. As we've pointed out today, there are multiple options, very green options as well, very sustainable options as well, so you can be doing good while, you know, doing something to reduce traffic in Malta. Once again, guys, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Let us know in the comments below what you think as far as transportation in Malta is. What areas would you see improvement in? Is there anything abroad that you'd like to see in Malta? And your reaction to today's conversation. Until next time, have a day full of love.